Hey everyone, my name is Lauren Pierce. I'm 36 years old, and for most of my adult life, people describe me with the same word: reliable. Not ambitious, not talented, not even kind, just reliable. The kind of woman people lean on but never lean toward. The kind of woman whose phone rings only when something is needed. I didn't realize how much that word would cost me until the night my son asked me a question I couldn't answer. And I finally understood that being dependable had slowly erased me. But before I tell you how it all came crashing down, if you connect with stories about invisible labor, about being taken for granted, about finally choosing yourself after years of quiet sacrifice, go ahead and like this video, subscribe if this feels familiar, and tell me in the comments, where are you watching from and what time is it there? Now, let me take you back. 7 years ago, I was 29 years old, newly divorced, living in a modest 2-bedroom rental just outside Columbus, Ohio. The house had thin walls, old carpet that never quite smelled clean, and a heating system that rattled all night long. But it was mine, and more importantly, it was safe. I had my son, Ethan, 4 years old at the time, all elbows and curiosity, with a laugh so loud it echoed down the hallway. I worked as a project coordinator, nothing glamorous but stable. Bills paid, food on the table, a routine. And then my sister Rachel gave birth. That was the moment everything changed. Rachel was always the golden one. 2 years younger than me, effortlessly charming, the kind of person who never seemed to struggle, even when she absolutely was. Growing up, teachers adored her. Neighbors remembered her name. Strangers smiled at her in grocery stores. And I was the one who handled things. If something broke, I fixed it. If someone cried, I listened. If a problem needed solving, it quietly landed in my lap. No one ever said that out loud. They didn't have to. When Rachel had her first child, Lily, the entire family revolved around her. My parents brought casseroles. Friends dropped off gifts. Social media exploded with congratulations. I brought diapers, night shifts, patience. At first, it made sense. She's exhausted, my mom said. She needs support. Of course she did. So when Rachel called one afternoon crying, asking if I could come over just for a bit, I went. That was the first night Lily slept at my place. Just one night, or so I thought. It started small. Lauren, can you watch her while I shower? Lauren, can you keep her overnight? I haven't slept. Lauren, can you take her this weekend? I just need a reset. Rachel always sounded overwhelmed, fragile, on the edge. I told myself this was temporary. That's the lie that made everything else possible. Within 6 months, Lily had a drawer at my house. Within a year, she had a toothbrush, a bedtime routine, and a favorite stuffed animal that never went back to Rachel's place. By the time Rachel had her second child, Noah, it wasn't even a discussion anymore. The kids just came to me. Lauren's better with them. Lauren has more patience. Lauren doesn't mind. That last one hurt more than I admitted. Rachel framed it differently. She called it co-parenting. She posted smiling photos online, calling herself so grateful for her village. She never tagged me. Family gatherings became strange. People praised Rachel for doing it all, while I stood in the kitchen, cutting fruit, refilling drinks, helping kids with spills and scraped knees. If someone thanked me, Rachel laughed it off. Oh, Lauren loves this stuff. As if love explained exhaustion. I worked full-time. I raised my son. I raised her kids. And somehow, I still felt like I wasn't doing enough. The first time something truly felt wrong was a Sunday afternoon 6 years ago. Rachel dropped the kids off early, said she had a migraine. She looked pale, tired. I believed her. That night, after baths and bedtime stories, I opened my phone and scrolled through social media. There she was. Rachel, at a winery, sunglasses on, glass raised, smiling like the world had never touched her. The caption read, "Self-care isn't selfish." I stared at that screen until my eyes burned. Then I closed the app and went back to folding laundry. That was the moment I taught myself to ignore my instincts. From there, the pattern solidified. Rachel stopped asking. She started assuming. Texts came in like instructions. "They're with you tonight. You've got them this weekend. I'm running late, just feed them." If I hesitated, her tone shifted. "You know I don't have anyone else. You're more stable than me. You don't mind, right?" And when I did mind, she sighed, as if I were inconveniencing her by having limits. My parents sided with her. "Rachel's overwhelmed," my mom said. "You've always been strong." Strong. Another word that sounds like praise until you realize it means you don't get help. Ethan noticed before I did. Kids always do. Why do Lily and Noah sleep here so much? Why doesn't Aunt Rachel pick them up? I softened the truth. She's working. She needs help right now. I didn't realize I was teaching my son that disappearing was acceptable as long as someone else carried the weight. As the years passed, I started missing things: birthday parties, work opportunities, rest. Rachel didn't. Her life looked full. Mine felt managed. The breaking point didn't come with shouting. It came with whispers. It was a Wednesday morning, parent-teacher conference week. I'd taken time off work, juggling schedules, packing lunches for 3 kids while mentally rehearsing what I wanted to say. Ethan was struggling a little in math. Nothing serious, just distracted. I wanted to be proactive. I sat in the tiny classroom chair, knees nearly touching the desk, waiting for the teacher to arrive. That's when I heard my name, not spoken kindly, spoken carefully, from the hallway. "I'm just concerned," Rachel's voice said softly. "She takes on too much." Another voice responded, the school counselor. I didn't realize she was the primary caregiver. "Oh, yes," Rachel replied. "She insists. I try to set boundaries, but she gets controlling." Controlling. My stomach dropped. "She means well," Rachel continued, "but it creates instability. The kids need consistency." Instability. My hands started shaking. I sat frozen, listening as my sister calmly rewrote my life. I wasn't the helper, I was the problem. The door opened. Rachel smiled when she saw me. "Hey, sis." As if nothing had happened. As if I hadn't just heard the story she was telling about me when I wasn't in the room. That meeting ended politely. Concerned nods. Notes taken. A comment added to Ethan's file about home environment stress. My environment, my fault. That night, after the kids were asleep, I sat alone on the couch, lights off, phone in my hand. I scrolled back through years of messages, requests, assumptions, guilt, and not one message asking how I was doing. Not one. That's when it hit me. I wasn't just being used, I was being replaced. My labor was expected, but my voice was inconvenient. And my reputation, disposable. I didn't confront Rachel. Not yet. I needed to understand how far the damage went, because something told me this wasn't just about childcare. This was about control, and what I would uncover next would change how everyone saw her, including the people who had believed her for years. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I lay on the couch, staring at the faint glow of the microwave clock, listening to the soft rhythm of 3 different breathing patterns down the hallway. Ethan, Lily, Noah. 3 kids who trusted me completely, and 1 adult who had just quietly painted me as a threat. Morning came anyway, it always does. Cereal bowls, missing socks, backpacks by the door. Rachel arrived late, like usual, sunglasses on, phone pressed to her ear. She didn't look at me when she picked up the kids, didn't ask how Ethan's meeting went, didn't notice the dark circles under my eyes. That was when I realized something important. She wasn't nervous, which meant she thought she was winning. I didn't confront her. Instead, I watched. People underestimate what happens when the reliable one goes quiet. They think silence means compliance. They don't realize it can mean documentation. Over the next few weeks, I started paying attention in a way I never had before. I saved messages instead of responding immediately. I took screenshots when plans were changed last minute. I wrote dates and times in the Notes app on my phone, not to build a case, at least not at first, just to ground myself. Because once someone starts rewriting reality, you need proof to remember who you actually are. Rachel's behavior changed subtly. She began arriving unannounced, questioning routines, critiquing food choices. Is Lily really allowed that much screen time? Why does Noah keep saying he sleeps better here? Don't you think Ethan should have more structure? Each comment sounded reasonable. That's how she did it. Concern wrapped in sweetness, judgment disguised as care. Then came the third-party comments. My mom called one evening. I ran into Rachel today, she said casually. She's worried about you. Worried? I laughed softly. She says you're overwhelmed, that you've taken on too much responsibility. I closed my eyes. She said I insisted, I replied carefully. There was a pause. Well, she just wants what's best for the kids. So did I. Only one of us was being believed. The school emails started changing tone, nothing overt, just language. Given the family dynamics, we want to ensure stability. We'd like to loop in all guardians, plural. Rachel was positioning herself as the reasonable one. I was being cast as the emotional variable. The irony was brutal. I was doing more than ever. Homework, doctor's appointments, therapy sessions for Noah's night terrors. But the more competent I was, the easier it became to paint me as controlling. People love a capable woman until they decide she has too much influence. The real turning point came with Lily's recital. She was 7, nervous. She'd practiced her piano piece every night for weeks, fingers stumbling, then steady, then confident. She wanted me there. Promise you won't sit in the back, she whispered. I want to see you. I promised. Rachel arrived late. Again. She slid into the row beside me, all smiles. When Lily finished playing, the applause was polite but warm. Rachel stood up first. She hugged Lily, tears in her eyes. My baby, she said loudly. People turned, smiled. I clapped quietly. Then Rachel did something small, something devastating. She leaned toward another parent and said, just loud enough, "It's been hard. Lauren has a hard time letting go." The parent nodded sympathetically. At me. That was the moment I understood. This wasn't accidental. This was strategy. Rachel wasn't overwhelmed. She was repositioning. That night, after the kids were asleep, I opened my laptop. I searched my name. Nothing dramatic, but then I searched Rachel's. Blog posts, local parenting groups, support forums. She was active, very active. And there it was, a post from 3 months earlier, anonymous, but unmistakably her. Has anyone dealt with a family member who oversteps with your kids? Someone who insists on being the primary caregiver and subtly undermines you? The comments were brutal. Sounds like control issues. She needs boundaries. That's unhealthy for the children. Rachel had replied to several, thanking them, agreeing, using my life as a cautionary tale. I felt physically sick, years of unpaid labor, rewritten into pathology. I didn't cry, not yet. I felt something colder, clearer, resolve. The next week, Rachel asked to talk. She came over after dinner, sat at my kitchen table like a guest, hands folded, expression gentle. I think we need to make some changes, she said. I waited. I appreciate everything you've done, she continued, but I'm worried the kids are confused about roles. Roles? I think it would be healthier if they spent more time with me. I stared at her. You mean, suddenly? She smiled sadly. You've always struggled with transitions. There it was again. The story. I'll still need your help, she added quickly. Just less control. Control. The word hung between us like smoke. That night, I made a decision. If she wanted to change the narrative, I would let her, but I would stop carrying the weight that made her story possible. The next morning, I replied differently, shorter, clearer. When she asked for last-minute care, I said no. When she tried to guilt me, I didn't explain. When she complained to family, I stayed quiet. And something fascinating happened. She panicked. Texts came faster. Calls went unanswered. Her tone shifted from concern to irritation, then to accusation. "You're punishing the kids. You're being selfish. You're proving my point." My parents noticed. "Rachel says you've pulled away," my dad said. "I've adjusted," I replied. There was a difference. They didn't see it yet, but they would. The kids noticed too. Lily asked why she couldn't stay over. Noah cried at night. Ethan watched everything. One evening, he sat beside me on the couch. "You look tired," he said. "I'm okay," I answered. He shook his head. "You're always okay." That hurt more than anything Rachel had said. Then came the call I didn't expect. Child services. A routine check, they said. Just a conversation. Someone had raised concerns about boundaries, about emotional dependency, about instability. I hung up and sat very still. Rachel had crossed a line, a dangerous one. But here's the thing she didn't know. I had years of messages, calendars, school emails, medical forms with my name listed as emergency contact. I had proof, and I had witnesses, teachers, doctors, neighbors, people who would quietly watch me hold everything together. I didn't lash out, I didn't post, I didn't confront, I prepared. Because when you've been invisible for years, people forget how much they rely on your presence. And when that presence is questioned, the truth has a way of surfacing. The visit was scheduled for the following week. Rachel thought she was ahead. She thought she'd framed the narrative early enough. She was wrong. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't reacting. I was ready. And when the questions started, they didn't go the way she expected. The caseworker arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, right on time. She parked across the street, clipboard tucked under her arm, neutral expression, practiced calm. I watched her through the living room window while the kids colored at the table. Rachel wasn't here yet. That didn't surprise me. She was never early when responsibility was involved. The woman introduced herself as Marianne. She spoke gently, clear, direct. "We just want to understand the family structure," she said. "No one's in trouble." That sentence is never meant for the person who's actually being evaluated. She sat on the couch. I sat across from her. The kids stayed within eyesight. That mattered. Marianne started with basics, names, ages, school. Then the tone shifted slightly. "Can you explain your role in your niece and nephew's daily care?" I didn't embellish. I didn't minimize. I told the truth. I've been their primary caregiver most weekdays and many weekends for over 6 years, I said calmly. I manage school communication, medical appointments, and daily routines. She nodded, wrote something down. "And their mother?" "She's involved intermittently," I replied, "when she's available." Marianne paused. "Available how?" I took a breath. She decides her level of involvement. Still neutral, still factual. Then came the question I'd been preparing for. Have there been concerns about boundaries or emotional dependency? I met her eyes. "Yes," I said. "There have." She looked up, surprised. "Can you explain?" "Yes," I continued. "There have been concerns raised about me that don't match reality. That's why I've documented everything." I reached for the folder on the table. Not dramatically, just ready. Calendars, school emails, doctor visit summaries, emergency contact forms with my name highlighted. 6 years of consistency. Marianne didn't react, but she slowed down. She flipped through each page carefully. "That's thorough," she said. "I needed it to be," I replied. The door opened. Rachel walked in mid-sentence, voice already elevated. "Sorry I'm late," she said. "Traffic was insane." She froze when she saw the folder, just for half a second, but I saw it. Rachel smiled too widely, sat beside Marianne, placed a hand on her knee like they were already aligned. "I've just been so worried," Rachel said immediately. "I feel like I lost control of my own children." Control. Always that word. Marianne nodded politely. Can you describe what you mean? Rachel sighed. The performance began. Lauren means well, she said softly. She just took over. She insists on doing everything. It makes it hard for the kids to see me as their mother. I didn't interrupt. I didn't flinch. Marianne glanced at me. Is that accurate? No, I said. It isn't. Rachel's head snapped toward me. She asked me to help, I continued calmly, repeatedly for years. I never insisted. Rachel laughed lightly. That's not how it felt. Marianne held up a hand. I'd like to see communication records, she said. Rachel stiffened. I don't have those, she replied. I didn't think to keep them. Of course she didn't. I slid my phone across the table. Marianne scrolled. Slowly, her expression changed. Not dramatically, but subtly, professionally. Rachel leaned forward. You're taking her side? I'm reviewing evidence, Marianne replied evenly. Rachel's voice sharpened. She's manipulating the situation. She always does. I spoke quietly. Rachel, please don't do this in front of the kids. That's when Marianne looked up sharply. Do what? She asked. Rachel hesitated. The silence stretched. No one filled it. Marianne cleared her throat. Rachel, can you explain why school records list Lauren as primary contact? Rachel waved a hand dismissively. She volunteered. I didn't want to argue. Why do medical records list her as consent provider? Rachel shrugged. She was available. And why, Marianne continued, do these messages show you requesting overnight care 4 to 5 times a week? Rachel's cheeks flushed. You're twisting things, she snapped. Marianne closed the folder. I don't believe I am. The kids were quiet now. Too quiet. Ethan stood in the hallway, watching, listening, learning. Marianne turned to Rachel. I'm concerned about inconsistencies in your account. Rachel's voice rose. So you're blaming me? I'm clarifying, Marianne said calmly. Rachel stood up. This is unbelievable. I came here for help. Marianne remained seated, and we're providing it, but help requires honesty. Rachel looked at me. Her eyes burned. You planned this? She hissed. No, I said softly. I survived it. The visit ended with instructions, follow-up interviews, school consultations, a temporary recommendation for stability, meaning nothing would change immediately. Rachel left without saying goodbye, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the walls. That night, the kids were restless. Lily crawled into my lap. Are we in trouble? She whispered. No, I said. You're safe. After they fell asleep, I sat at the table alone, hands wrapped around a mug I didn't drink from. My phone buzzed, message from my mother. What did you do to your sister? I stared at the screen, then typed. I told the truth. The fallout came fast. Family group chats exploded, accusations, confusion, sides forming. Rachel posted online, vague, emotional, victimized. I never thought protecting my children would cost me my family. People commented with hearts, support, outrage. I stayed silent, again. But this time, silence wasn't surrender. It was strategy. The school called. They wanted meetings, clarification. Rachel hadn't anticipated that. Doctors followed up. Therapists asked questions. Patterns emerged. Rachel tried to regain control. She demanded the kids back full time, missed pickups, forgot appointments, showed up late, again, and people noticed. Not because I said anything, but because I stopped covering. One afternoon, Marianne called. I need to update you, she said, please. Based on evidence and interviews, she continued, we're recommending a formal caregiving agreement. My heart pounded. And? I asked. And Rachel is not comfortable with the proposed structure. Of course she wasn't. She says you've turned everyone against her. I exhaled slowly. That's not what happened, Marianne said gently, but she may pursue legal action. I hung up and sat very still. Rachel was escalating because she was losing. That night, Ethan sat beside me again. "Are you okay now?" he asked. I thought about it. Honestly. "I'm getting there," I said. He nodded. "That's good." Because the truth was, for the first time in years, I wasn't holding everything alone. People were seeing, listening, questioning. Rachel had built her story on my silence, and silence had finally ended. But she wasn't done yet, not even close, because the next move she made would force everything into the open, publicly, legally, irreversibly. And when that happened, there would be no hiding behind concern, no soft language, no rewritten narratives, only facts and consequences. Rachel didn't wait long. People like her never do. They don't sit with uncertainty. They don't tolerate loss of control. They escalate until the world bends back into shape or breaks. 3 days after Marianne's call, I received an email from a lawyer. Subject line: Notice of intent regarding custodial interference. My name spelled correctly, my address accurate, the language cold and precise. Rachel was accusing me of interfering with her parental rights. I read it twice, then a third time. Not because I didn't understand it, but because I needed to feel the weight of it without panicking, because panic was what she wanted. I forwarded the email to Marianne, then to a family law attorney a coworker had quietly recommended months earlier. I hadn't called him then. I'd sensed I might need him eventually. That evening, my parents came over, unannounced. They sat stiffly on my couch, hands folded like guests instead of family. My mother spoke first. "Rachel is devastated," she said. I nodded. "She says you're trying to take her children." I looked at my father. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "I never asked for this," I said calmly. "I didn't start it." "That doesn't matter," my mother snapped. "She's their mother." "And I've been their caregiver," I replied. Silence. Uncomfortable. My father finally spoke. "Why didn't you tell us how bad it was?" I swallowed. "I did," I said quietly. "You just didn't hear it as urgent." My mother shook her head. "This has gone too far." I almost laughed, because what she meant was, it had gone too far for Rachel. The next morning, Rachel posted again, this time not vague, direct. I never imagined my own sister would try to erase me as a mother. I trusted her, I was vulnerable, and she used that to take control. No names, but everyone knew. Friends messaged me, some cautiously, some accusing, some silent. Then came the comments. People debating my character based on a paragraph written by someone who had mastered emotional performance. I didn't respond, not publicly, but I stopped protecting her privately. When Rachel missed Noah's therapy appointment, I didn't cover. When Lily's teacher asked why her mother hadn't replied to emails, I told the truth. She hasn't responded. Not excuses, facts. The lawyer called me back. His voice was calm, experienced. "She doesn't have much," he said, "not with the records you've kept." "But she can still hurt me," I replied. "Yes," he said honestly, "people like her usually try." Rachel requested an emergency mediation. She framed it as reconciliation. Her lawyer framed it as compromise. But the paperwork told the truth. She wanted full control back, immediately. The mediation was scheduled for Friday. Neutral office, neutral mediator, neutral chairs that were anything but comfortable. Rachel arrived dressed carefully. Soft colors, minimal makeup, concerned expression practiced to perfection. She hugged the mediator. She did not look at me. "I just want peace," she said immediately. "For my children." I sat still, listened. She cried at the right moments, paused when silence would work in her favor, spoke about anxiety, about feeling replaced, about how she lost herself after motherhood. When it was my turn, I spoke plainly. I talked about logistics, consistency, time. I didn't attack her. I didn't diagnose her. I described reality. The mediator asked questions. Rachel stumbled, not dramatically, just enough. Dates she couldn't remember, routines she didn't know, teachers' names she guessed at. Then came the moment, the one she hadn't prepared for. The mediator asked, "Rachel, if Lauren stepped back completely tomorrow, what would your care schedule look like?" Rachel blinked. "Well, I'd figure it out." "How?" the mediator pressed. Rachel laughed nervously. "I'm their mother." That wasn't an answer. I watched her unravel. Not emotionally, logistically, which is far more dangerous. The mediation ended without resolution, which meant, next step, court. That weekend, something unexpected happened. Rachel showed up at my house, unannounced, again. She stood on the porch, arms crossed tightly, eyes wild. "You think you've won," she said. "I think the kids deserve stability," I replied. She laughed sharply. "You don't care about them. You care about being needed." That one landed, because once upon a time it might have been true. "You stole my life," she continued. "You made everyone think you were better." "I didn't steal anything," I said quietly. "You handed it to me, then blamed me for holding it." Her voice dropped. "You don't know who you're messing with." I met her gaze. "I do," I said. "I grew up with you." She left without another word, but the damage wasn't done yet. 2 days later, Ethan came home from school silent. Too silent. That night, he finally spoke. "Someone asked me why you hate my aunt." My chest tightened. "Who?" "A kid. His mom said things." Rachel had taken it to the playground, to the parking lot, to the whispers that spread faster than facts. That was when I realized she wasn't trying to win legally. She was trying to break me socially. The attorney warned me. "She may try to provoke you," he said. "Don't give her anything." So I didn't, but I also didn't hide. When a school meeting was scheduled, I attended. When a therapist requested clarification, I provided it. When friends asked directly, I told the truth, calmly, without drama, and slowly. The tone shifted. People began asking her questions. Rachel noticed. Her messages became erratic, long, accusatory, then apologetic, then angry again. One night she sent a text that changed everything. "I could tell them things about you, things you wouldn't want shared." I stared at the screen, heart pounding. Then I did something she never expected. I screenshot it and forwarded it to my lawyer. The next morning, Rachel deleted the message. Too late. That same week, Marianne called again. "I need to inform you," she said carefully, "that concerns have been raised about Rachel's conduct." My breath caught. "She's been contacting third parties excessively," Marianne continued, "and some communications could be considered coercive." I closed my eyes. "We're recommending supervised exchanges," Marianne said, "until things stabilize." Rachel lost it. Online, privately, with family. My parents came over again, this time quieter. My mother's eyes were red. "She didn't tell us everything," she admitted. I nodded. "I know." My father finally said the words I'd waited years to hear. "You shouldn't have had to carry this alone." But Rachel wasn't finished, because when control slips from people like her, they don't retreat. They expose themselves. The court date was set, public record, public consequences, and on the eve of that hearing, Rachel made one last move, the kind that can't be undone, the kind that forces the truth into the light. She sent an email, not just to me, but to my employer, the school, extended family, friends, a manifesto disguised as concern, accusations, half-truths, narratives stitched together with fear. I read it once. Then I closed my laptop. Because I knew something she didn't. She had overplayed her hand, and the evidence she'd ignored for years was about to speak for itself. The hearing didn't feel dramatic. There was no pounding gavel, no raised voices, no moment where the room seemed to hold its breath. It felt administrative, which I would later realize was exactly why it mattered, Because when stories fall apart under drama, they can be rebuilt with emotion. But when they fall apart under procedure, there's no place to hide. The room was small, neutral walls, a narrow table, 3 chairs on each side. Rachel arrived 6 minutes late, not enough to be disrespectful, just enough to reassert habit. She looked around when she entered, as if expecting someone to acknowledge her presence. No one did. She sat down hard, crossed her legs, adjusted her jacket, still performing. I noticed something strange. For the first time in years, I didn't feel responsible for her mood, not her nerves, not her fear, not her anger. The detachment surprised me. The judge entered without ceremony. She didn't smile, didn't scowl. She simply sat, opened the file, and began. Rachel's attorney spoke first. He framed everything gently. Family strain, burnout, miscommunication, a well-meaning sister who overstepped, a mother who temporarily struggled. The words were chosen carefully. I watched Rachel as he spoke. She nodded at the right moments, sighed quietly when expected. She knew the script. Then the judge began asking questions, not rhetorical ones, specific ones. How many school days did you handle drop-off and pickup last year? Rachel hesitated. Well, it varied. The judge waited. I don't have exact numbers. She turned to me. Ms. Pierce? I opened my folder. 212, I said calmly. Rachel shifted in her seat. Who attended medical appointments? The judge asked. I did, I answered. 84% over 6 years. Rachel interrupted. That doesn't mean I didn't care. The judge raised a hand. No one said that, she replied evenly, but care and responsibility are not interchangeable. The questions continued. Logistics, consistency, patterns. Every answer Rachel gave relied on intent. Every answer I gave relied on record. At one point, the judge paused. She leaned back slightly, and then she said something that would stay with me forever. This court does not adjudicate love, she said. It adjudicates reliability. Rachel froze. The judge reviewed the final documents, messages, calendars, school notes, a timeline that showed something undeniable. This arrangement had not been accidental. It had been sustained. You accepted support for an extended period, the judge said to Rachel. You did not resume primary responsibility when circumstances changed. Rachel's voice cracked. I didn't know how. The judge nodded once. That may be true, she said, but it does not entitle you to rewrite reality. The ruling followed. Structured caregiving, clear transitions, defined authority, supervised exchanges for a defined period, mandatory counseling. Rachel didn't lose her children, but she lost the ability to blur lines, and that was everything. Outside the building, the air felt sharper, colder. Rachel stood near the steps, hands shaking slightly. You enjoyed this, she said suddenly. I looked at her, really looked. She looked smaller now, not because she'd lost, but because she could no longer expand into my silence. No, I said gently. I endured it. She laughed bitterly. You always think you're the victim. I considered that, then shook my head. I think I'm finally done being one. She walked away without another word. No dramatic exit, no audience, just the sound of heels fading against concrete. The weeks that followed were quiet, not peaceful. Quiet, there's a difference. Family dynamics shifted. Some relatives apologized. Some avoided the subject. A few quietly admitted they'd believed the wrong story. I didn't demand explanations. I didn't chase closure. I accepted what was offered and left the rest behind. At school, things normalized. Teachers stopped lowering their voices. Emails returned to logistics instead of concern. The kids settled. Lily stopped packing bags, just in case. Noah stopped asking where he'd sleep next. Ethan laughed more freely. One night, months later, Ethan sat beside me on the couch. You're different, he said. How? I asked. You don't look tired all the time. I smiled. That was the first compliment I'd received that wasn't really a request. Rachel attended counseling sporadically. Some weeks she showed up, some weeks she didn't. But here's what changed. Her inconsistency was no longer hidden, and it wasn't mine to compensate for. I returned to work fully, accepted a promotion I'd declined twice, hired help without guilt, stopped apologizing for rest, and then something unexpected happened. Without constant crisis. I didn't know who I was. I had built my identity around being needed, around being reliable, around being the one who stayed. When that role disappeared, there was space. Too much space. At first, the quiet scared me. Then it taught me something. I started walking in the mornings, reading books without multitasking, saying no without explanation, not as rebellion, as alignment. One afternoon, my mother called. "I should have listened sooner," she said quietly. I didn't argue. I didn't absolve. I let the words exist. That was enough. Rachel and I speak occasionally now, briefly, logistically, without emotional spillover. She is their mother. I am their aunt. And for a long time, I was something unnamed, something unsustainable. But not anymore. One evening, Lily handed me a folded piece of paper, a drawing, our house, stick figures, everyone smiling. At the bottom, she had written, "Thank you for staying without disappearing." That was when I understood. I hadn't stayed because I was obligated. I stayed because I loved, and love does not require erasure. People talk about being reliable like it's a virtue without cost. They don't talk about what it asks you to give up. Your time, your voice, your edges, until one day you choose yourself, and the world realizes you were never weak, just quiet. If this story feels familiar to you, if you've been the one holding everything together, if your silence has been mistaken for consent, let this be your reminder. You don't have to burn bridges to stop being walked on. You don't need permission to step back, and choosing yourself doesn't make you cruel. It makes you visible. If this story stayed with you, if it made you uncomfortable, emotional, or reflective, that's because it wasn't just a story. It was a mirror. Being reliable should never mean being replaceable. Lauren wasn't weak. She was too dependable. And people often confuse availability with obligation. Silence is not consent. Just because you don't complain doesn't mean you agree. And just because you're calm doesn't mean you're okay. Helping someone should never erase your identity. Support is healthy. Self-erasure is not. Boundaries don't destroy families. They expose the truth. When Lauren stopped covering for others, the real story finally came out. Choosing yourself isn't betrayal, it's survival. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever been the reliable one in your family or relationship? What happened when you finally set boundaries? Or are you still carrying everything alone? Tell your story in the comments. I read every single one. And please add, where are you watching from? Country or state? What time is it for you right now? This helps this story reach more people like you. If this story gave you words for something you felt but never said, like this video, it tells YouTube this story matters. Subscribe, because these stories are for people who've been invisible too. Share this with someone who's always the strong one. They might need it more than you realize. Remember this, you don't need permission to rest. You don't need proof to set boundaries, and you don't need to disappear to be loved. Thank you for staying until the end. You're not alone here.